Beneath the bustling streets of Jerusalem, beneath the layers of time, noise, and stone, lies a place where history and eternity collide, a place where the fate of one man became the turning point of all mankind. This is the Praetorium, part of what was once the Antonia Fortress, the place where Jesus stood face to face with Pontius Pilate, just hours before the cross. This wasn't a quiet moment in a corner of the city. It was the center of political power, of military command, of public judgment. The Antonia Fortress stood on the northwest corner of the Temple Mount. Built by Herod the Great and named in honor of his friend Mark Antony, it served as a barracks for Roman soldiers and the local seat of Roman authority. It towered over the temple complex, both literally and symbolically, Rome's eyes always watching Jerusalem. During major Jewish festivals, Roman governors like Pontius Pilate often left their base in Caesarea and came to Jerusalem to oversee the crowds, maintain control, and crush any whispers of rebellion. During Passover, the city swelled with pilgrims, tensions were high, and in this charged atmosphere, Jesus was arrested, brought to the high priests, and then handed over to Pilate, right here in the Praetorium. The Gospel accounts describe the scene vividly. Jesus, bound and bruised, stood silently as Pilate questioned him. "Are you the king of the Jews?" Pilate asked. Jesus replied, "My kingdom is not of this world." Pilate, caught between truth and politics, fear and pressure, tried to release him. But the crowd, stirred by the religious leaders, shouted louder, "Crucify him!" And in this very place, Pilate washed his hands before the crowd and handed Jesus over to be crucified. It was here that Roman soldiers mocked him, dressed him in a purple robe, placed a crown of thorns on his head, and struck him. They knelt before him in cruel irony, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" The floor they stood on still exists today, underneath the convent of the Sisters of Zion. Known as the Lithostrotos, or stone pavement, it is believed to be part of the Roman pavement where Jesus was scourged and sentenced. Visitors can still see the ancient game etched into the stones, thought to be the King's Game played by Roman soldiers, a cruel entertainment in which Jesus may have been the object of their scorn. From this place begins the Via Dolorosa, the Way of Suffering. It winds through the narrow streets of Jerusalem's Old City, marking the path Jesus took to Golgotha. Station 1 begins right at the site of the Praetorium, reminding all who walk it that this journey of sacrifice didn't begin with the cross. It began with injustice, humiliation, and silence in the face of power. Today, though the original Antonia Fortress no longer stands, its legacy is deeply preserved underground. The convent of the Sisters of Zion offers access to the Lithostrotos, as well as ancient Roman cisterns, arches, and flagstones, layers of Jerusalem that still hold the memory of those final hours before the crucifixion. Walking through the dimly lit corridors beneath the convent is like entering a hidden world. The air is heavy, the stones are cold, and every step feels like a return to the moment the world held its breath. The location itself may be buried beneath centuries of construction and change, but its meaning remains clear. The Praetorium wasn't just the site of a political decision. It was the place where God's Son stood trial before man, where justice was twisted, where silence became the loudest truth, and where the Lamb was handed over, not because Pilate believed he was guilty, but because the world couldn't handle his innocence. And perhaps what's most striking is how little has changed. Power still fears truth. Crowds still demand blood. And yet, just like then, there is still one figure who stands quietly in the middle of it all, unmoving, unshaken, and full of purpose. The remains of the Praetorium call us to remember that redemption didn't start with the resurrection. It started here in the shadow of injustice. It began when the King of Kings allowed himself to be mocked as a criminal so that grace could be poured out for all. If you're drawn to the sacred places where history and faith collide, where stones still speak, and where silence once held the weight of eternity, then subscribe to this channel. Because the story doesn't end here. It's just the beginning of the most powerful journey ever taken.